we have talked about the adaptive advantage of different structures. And one has to be cautious and not jump to conclusions. Look at the neck of a giraffe, for example. Freeman in 2003 described it as a tiny head on a massive neck, the whole perched on stilts. To watch the gymnastic contortions when they bend to take a drink is to wonder if they weren't put together by a committee. If you have ever worked on a committee, you appreciate that quote. So if I ask anyone to hypothesize why giraffes have a long neck, pretty much everyone would say giraffes evolved the long neck to feed on the upper part of tall trees to avoid competition with other browsers. So a couple of researchers, again that Freeman, took it upon themselves to test this hypothesis. So they observed male and female giraffes feeding in woodlands. And what you see here on the y-axis is the height where they fed in the trees, and here is the fraction of bites that they took at each height. And what you can clearly see in both instances, the maximum number of bites were taken much lower than actually their neck allowed. So there's an alternative hypothesis, since this went down the drain. And this is based on the following observations: that males use their neck as clubs when fighting, as you can see in this figure, and that the male's neck is 30 to 40 centimeters longer than the female's. It's also heavier, their skulls are more armored, and their skulls are heavier. So again, thorough researchers tested this. And how they tested this is by looking at how many times males with longer necks displaced males with shorter necks when they fought with each other. And you can see here that 82% of the time out of 88 fights, the long necks won. And another criterion they used was whether the males with longer necks had more success with females. So it's very difficult to gauge success with females because they are never observed in nature mating with each other. What they took instead is a male success was based on an observation that he was allowed to taste a female's urine, for which he needs the female's cooperation. And why the males taste the female urine is to figure out whether the female is in heat. So you can see here again that those with long necks were allowed to this privilege of tasting urine 60.7% of the time, while the short necks were only allowed to taste it 33.6% of the time. So the test results confirmed the hypothesis. Of course, they didn't prove it, since you can never prove anything in science, but it pretty much disproved that it was based on the feeding preferences in higher elevations to avoid competition.